Tonight, we begin with a development that U.S. and European officials had feared, tracked, and quietly prepared for. A strike that unfolded not over weeks, but in hours. Hours that triggered emergency alarms across Moscow. Hours that forced an immediate Kremlin security meeting. Hours that sent nuclear safety agencies into high alert. What Ukraine did today crossed a line that Russia's leadership had hoped would never be tested. And when that line broke, Kyiv did not hesitate. They responded with precision, restraint, and strategic intent. For weeks now, there had been signals, not official announcements, not formal statements, just quiet intelligence indicators that Ukraine was preparing something extraordinary. Ukraine has been defensive, yes, but it has been deliberate in its defense. Its actions followed a certain pattern, a discipline, almost a doctrine. But what set off alarm bells in Western intelligence agencies this week was that the pattern went silent. Experts who monitor military and nuclear site activity know the indicators. The sudden communications blackout, the relocation of long-range strike units, the unusual drone flight pauses, and the abrupt shift in command traffic. All of it went quiet. And whenever Ukraine goes quiet, something is about to get loud. Early this morning, NATO-linked surveillance systems detected what they described as coordinated strike signatures, including precision flight paths that had not been activated in over a year. These are the kinds of operations Ukraine only deploys when signaling something very specific: deterrence, capability, or red line enforcement. Observers didn't know which category this fell into, or whether it fell into all three at once. But what they did know was that Ukraine was changing posture, and when a nuclear-armed state adversary sees that shift, even by a small measure, every major capital pays attention. The warning issued by the United States and NATO tonight was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent. Senior officials, after emergency security briefings, described Russia's position as highly unstable, escalation-prone, and most importantly, dangerously miscalculated, meaning Moscow failed to anticipate Kyiv's response. But pressure only works if the target hesitates. Ukraine did not. In fact, today's response was among the most controlled, yet forceful, we've seen in this war. Within hours of the strike, Ukraine activated contingency operations. These were not ordinary measures. These were specialized precision systems, tools Ukraine deploys only when preparing to reshape strategic boundaries. Tonight, Western intelligence sources confirmed that Ukraine launched a precision strike operation on Russian nuclear-linked infrastructure, including a support facility that had recently been placed on heightened readiness for what analysts believe was defensive nuclear coordination. Ukraine struck before Russia could reposition air defenses. They hit command control nodes, they hit power support infrastructure, they hit logistics units that were preparing to support rapid escalation. In other words, Ukraine targeted enabling capability, not the reactor itself, the support architecture, the component that would have made escalation operational. That's what made Washington's warning so urgent. Russia's move wasn't symbolic, it was actionable. Left unchecked, it could have triggered a nuclear security crisis. Ukraine understood that and responded with force. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but strategically. They didn't strike civilian areas, they didn't hit the core nuclear asset, they hit functionality, they hit control. Here's where the story becomes even more serious. Western intelligence now believes Russia's posture was designed to test the resolve of Ukraine after months of battlefield pressure and infrastructure strain. The Kremlin wanted to see whether Kyiv would hesitate when nuclear facilities entered the equation. Instead, the opposite happened. Ukraine didn't hesitate. They responded with discipline, so precisely calibrated that even Moscow took notice. You don't get the Kremlin's attention easily, but today, Ukraine did. One senior analyst described Russia's move as coercive signaling, an attempt to intimidate without firing. Ukraine proved today that it remains both calculated and unafraid. Their actions were not only strong, they were executed with such precision that it demonstrated command maturity. That matters because it shows Ukraine is not reacting, they are setting boundaries. As reports continued throughout the day, the scale became clearer. Ukrainian strike units disrupted nuclear support logistics, forcing rapid Russian reassessment. Electronic warfare teams targeted systems activated within the last 48 hours. Cyber units operating remotely reportedly interfered with networks used to coordinate escalation planning. This wasn't just retaliation. This wasn't just messaging. This was strategic denial. This was escalation control. And escalation control is exactly what Russia has struggled to maintain since early 2023. Remember, Russia believed nuclear proximity would deter Ukraine. They believed the threat itself would be enough. They believed escalation would paralyze Kyiv. Tonight, the opposite is happening. Ukraine is asserting limits. The West is reinforcing deterrence, and nuclear leverage is losing effectiveness. What makes this moment so dangerous and so revealing is that this happened as President Putin faces intense internal pressure. Hardliners want escalation. Economic leaders want stability. Security chiefs want control. The public wants reassurance. And Putin is balancing all of this while managing a prolonged war. And leaders in that position don't act from confidence, they act from pressure. They act from vulnerability. NATO's statement, now widely circulated, was designed to signal one thing: the alliance will not tolerate nuclear brinkmanship. Officials said Russia's actions were inconsistent with nuclear safety norms. That's diplomatic language for "this crossed a line." You don't hear that tone unless something very serious is at stake. Meanwhile, President Zelensky addressed the nation in a firm, measured speech. He said Ukraine will never allow nuclear blackmail. He said our response will always be responsible. And he said security cannot be built on threats. Those aren't slogans, they're signals. And this wasn't isolated. Along with the strike, Russian forces raised regional alert levels, Allied intelligence detected parallel military movements, cyber activity increased across multiple domains. When a state moves multiple pieces at once, it means something larger is being tested. Analysts now see three possibilities. One, Russia de-escalates quietly. Another, Russia shifts tactics without public acknowledgement. A third, the most dangerous, is renewed coercive escalation. Today, Ukraine removed that third option. They didn't delay, they didn't bluff, they acted decisively. What we're watching now is a test of resolve. Russia wants dominance, Ukraine wants deterrence, NATO wants containment, and the world wants stability. And all of that converges here. Sources confirmed heightened monitoring. They say Russian command systems are reassessing. They say nuclear facilities remain under observation. And they say this fits a broader pressure testing strategy. Ukraine is not backing down. Their response, measured, firm, and strategic, sent a message to Moscow: intimidation will not work. And to allies, Ukraine remains steady. As the coming days unfold, we'll learn more about what Moscow intended, but what we already know is this: the response was timely, it prevented escalation, and it reinforced boundaries. What happens next depends on Russia's next move. If they pause, this becomes a warning. If they escalate, Ukraine and its allies have already shown they are ready. Tonight, for the first time in days, Russia appears quiet. The Kremlin is quiet. Too quiet. And when Moscow goes quiet, it means decisions are being weighed. Because tonight, Russia learned something. Nuclear threats don't guarantee control. Precision still matters, and restraint does not mean weakness. This story is far from over. But tonight, one thing is clear: the line held.